Karen, and thanks for being here with me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a beautiful good morning from British Columbia, and where are you in Alberta?
We're in Red Deer in Alberta, so we're right between Calgary and Edmonton, and it is particularly cold. I think it's minus 23 here this morning.
Wow, minus 23. It was minus 2, and I was complaining this morning.
Yeah, don't. And we expect it to get much colder. Yeah.
Yeah, it was minus 2, but it's sunny, so I
Yeah,
can't really
exactly.
complain about that. Thanks for taking the time to be with me today. Thanks for being in the first session of the experts panel. That's great. Karen, we have been working together for a few good time right now.
Yep.
We know each other, and I have to give a little bit of a bio about you. Thanks for sharing this with me.
Sure.
Karen actually is originally from Ireland. She completed her academic training in Ireland before qualifying as solicitor in England. Karen worked as a solicitor, focusing on the UK and European immigration law in London. And when I say London, I mean here London, England, not London, Ontario,
Right.
for a number of years before relocating to Canada with her husband and 3 kids. You have 3 wonderful kids, I know, right? So
Yeah.
we're very close. You have 3, I have 4. So we're still
Yeah.
in the league, right? Um,
Yeah.
by that time, Karen was called to the bar in Alberta in 2016, and you founded CRT in 2019. CRT Legal is focusing on the Canadian immigration law. So Karen is a Canadian immigration lawyer. And Karen assists a lot of clients in a broad range of immigration needs, from temporary entry or temporary permits, application, and through federal courts and citizenship matters. And actually, this is where Karen and I are having a lot of traction, especially guys when it comes to refusal and going to judicial reviews and a lot of federal court matters. This is where you and I actually we have been working for a while, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting area, and I know we're going to cover a lot of that later on. Yeah.
Definitely we will. Definitely we will. So again, thanks for being here. And I think we have a few interesting topics to talk about. One of them, let me start by the famous immigration plan. Actually, November was kind of a very busy month with a lot of announcements for immigration. So we have the immigration plan announced, and we have the new knock or tier right
Hmm.
now, and a
Hmm.
lot of changes happening. So I think that would be interesting for a lot of people to know what's going on in the immigration scheme, the Canadian immigration scheme in general. So let's start by
Yeah.
the immigration plan and your takeouts on that.
Yeah, so I mean, what I think is great about it is, first and foremost, is that Canada is at least portraying itself to be a very open and welcoming country, right? So I think we have a pretty progressive immigration plan in that it hopes to bring quite a lot of people into the country over the next couple of years. Um, the issue I think that we see with it on a practical level is its ability to actually meet the level that it has set for itself. So immigration in Canada has a lot of hurdles in terms of its technology, its capability to actually process applications and to do so in a timely manner. Right. So, I mean, I think it's something that I see in my practice, and I assume that you're the same, is that, when people talk to you, the couple of things they want to know is, will my application be approved and how long is it going to take?
Oh,
And those
definitely.
are, yeah, and those are the two things that really we cannot, they're probably the only two things that we really cannot say or give anybody any certain guarantee on, simply because, yes, there's a wonderful plan out there. We really want to bring people here, but the processes that we have to implement and bring those people are stretched, right? So can't give you a guarantee on time, can't give you a guarantee on outcome, and it's for many, many reasons.
I hear you.
Technology, we've seen over the last couple of months, technology is playing a huge part in the immigration process, and that's going to continue to grow and be in the background of this, a wonderful immigration plan. But what's behind it is going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out over the next year or so.
Yeah. Going back to your point about the timelines and all the clients are just they see the good outlook, but they don't see the back end. They see the front end, that all the
Correct.
applications and everything. So actually, funny enough, that I introduced a new terminology that's called a psychological call. So a lot of clients are waiting, and it's a painful waiting game. So all my team are assigning these kind of call in the CRM to me. We need a psychological call to this client that I'm calling and saying, you
Hmm.
know what, we're on top of your file. we know it's painful to wait, but nothing can you do or we can do for in the time being.
Right.
So it's a kind of psychological call. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is, and I kind of feel like it's different to what's happened over the last couple of years. I mean, I feel like a large part of what we're doing is actually managing client expectations. So I think people need to know upfront, like the things that we cannot tell you and is completely out of our control, or processing times and what's actually going to happen to your application.
You're right.
But I mean, and that's something that we're going to come across consistently. But the upside of it is not so much the upside of that, but the immigration plan that we have, I think, is it's ambitious. And I think there's a lot of interest in it, particularly as well if you look at different things like the parent and grandparent scheme. Those, it's expected that will continue to increase, or the intake for that will continue to increase over the next couple of years. However, for people who are already here wanting to bring family, those people haven't really been able to get the traction out of it that the government are hoping to get, simply because they opened it, I think, in 2020, and they're still 2 years later pulling people out of that round of invitations for
The
that
same
program,
rounds, right?
right? And
Yeah.
yet then the government says, hey, it's open for the 2 weeks in November every year, and I'm like, yeah, but not to new applicants. And you want to increase this capacity, or like the number of people that you bring in under this particular program, which immigrants to Canada are crying out for. I would love to have my family here, and yet you don't have the system in place to do it. So it's interesting, right? On one hand we're giving, and on the other hand it's very, very hard to see how it's going to happen. But hopeful.
Let me add a different perspective. I'm not sure if you find this with your client base or your clientele, but most of my clientele are from the Middle East, as you know already.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of YouTubers. I'm not sure if you're finding this in your client segment, but they make my life even harder, and they go out and say, "Oh, come to Canada in 14 days, no language required." I'm saying,
Really?
guys, just really, I would
Yeah.
love to, but it's never
Mm-mm.
going to happen.
No.
Again, for the global tenant stream, the GTS,
Yeah.
on the website it says 2 weeks processing time.
No.
Never happened.
Nope.
Never happened.
No.
So this is the things that people really have to know, that whatever on website, it's more of an administrative requirement. It's a kind of politics, but not really what's happening in real life. That's why
Right.
you guys come to us, right? So if it's that easy, if it's too easy to crack, we will not be here, definitely.
Right. Exactly. But also the other side of that is sometimes that you see the published waiting times for these applications can be up on 6 months, and then it comes through in like 6 weeks, right? So they really are only there as a guideline.
I got a visa, TRV visa from Abu Dhabi office in 5 days, while the processing
Right.
time was 193 days. I don't know how,
Exactly.
but it happened,
Yeah.
right?
Right. It's the magic name at the end of the form. But
Yeah,
it's absolutely, it's crazy. It's crazy. So look, I know that's a really high level look at like the immigration plan, I think, is a good one in theory, right? And it does show that Canada is open to receiving many, many new immigrants, more immigrants over the next couple of years. And it's been drawn up, in the face of significant labour shortages across Canada. I know you guys are seeing it in BC. We're seeing it here in Alberta, certainly. And it's there to kind of support the need, you know, within the country. However, the infrastructure to actually make that happen is the pain point that we're going to be dealing with for a long time, I think.
I agree. Meanwhile, let's go into the immigration plan itself and dissect the numbers a little bit. As you can see, I'm having the immigration plan in front of me. So the objective for 2023 is 465,000, and go to 2024 for 4,000. 485,000, and finally in 2025 is 500,000 people, right? We're
Right.
talking
Yeah.
about 1.5 million across these 3 years. This is a lot of number. This is a lot of
Hmm.
people. This is a lot of hope and potentiality for a lot of people.
Right. Yeah.
Going back to these three main segments, which is the economic, family, and finally refugee and protection. I don't do refugee. I don't think you do refugee too, right?
No, we don't do that either. Yeah, you could
So
have a whole practice built on that exclusively, right?
exactly.
So it's an interesting area, but no.
Yeah. So our both focus is on the economic and in the family side. So we both
That's
have
good.
the same traction. We can see the numbers of the economic immigration is really good, and about almost one or almost 2/3 of the whole target. But
Mhm.
when we go and dig it deeper in these numbers, we will find some surprises. For example, the province nomination is having more numbers and more objective numbers than
Right.
the express entry.
And that causes a concern for me, right? And I think you guys, it's reflective for you in BC as well. So in November, my understanding is that in BC, a lot of the provincial programs, their criteria kind of changed, or there was a big overhaul. We didn't see as big an overhaul here in Alberta. However, um, saying that so many of these people are going to be coming into Canada under the economic programs supported by the provinces, I think is a little bit disingenuous for a number of reasons. And the main one, I think, is that to process a permanent resident application under an economic pathway is about 2 years right now. And that still hasn't come down materially since, all the PR applications went online. So if you're getting a nomination from the province of Alberta, outside of express entry, you're looking at about 5 or 6 months for that nomination certificate to process.
Alberta is the worst.
Right? Yeah, probably. It's a
Kidding, but
great province, just the processes.
talking
So it
about
takes
the
about
immigration
five or six
stream.
months, right? And then once that's done, then you can apply for your permanent residence,
Yeah.
or you could potentially apply for a work permit, right? Depending on the circumstances. But to then get into that PR process where you're at least 18 months, right? On top of the 6 months that you've already done. Whereas if you just came under a federal program and you worked for 12 months, you are probably going to have, your PR shortly after that, right? If express entry
I
does what it's
agree. I
supposed to do.
agree. I agree. Given one thing that even if the timeline that you just mentioned, if you were under express interest stream, not non-express interest stream, which what we used to call the paper application, it's not
Mm,
paper, but it's digitalized right now, but
yeah,
still it's not an express entry. So that's why I always encourage my clients be at least hopefully that you are qualified for express entry and get an
right.
express entry profile before getting into province nomination. So you're being
Correct.
a little bit shorter.
Yeah, and even to make it more complicated, people always find it funny when I'm like, okay, you've express entry, not express entry, but sometimes express entry links up with the province. And even that's a good option. That's still even better than going straight on just to the province, right? But I also find that interesting. So if you look at those numbers on the immigration plan, and when you think about actually where those permanent resident numbers are going to come from, I mean, that's shoving that out for at least 2 or 3 years, right? So again, if you're giving the opportunity to the province to do this, it's a little disingenuous because of the length of time it's going to take. But also that's not presupposing, or maybe they're presupposing that a lot of those nominations are going to get used up under express entry, right? So the provincial process under express entry, and in Alberta, we see that takes about 2 months for that certificate to be issued, and then you get an additional points for your express entry profile, and then you're into the pool very, very quickly.
But
I
two
don't know
months
if
is
that's the
really good
same.
time.
Yeah, it is. So if you can get a provincial nomination under express entry, that's still really good. The provincial nomination process outside of express entry, particularly in Alberta, takes a very long time.
And this will be another episode of the experts panel that we will have about BC streams, BC PMP streams, and Alberta PMP streams
Yeah.
across different segments. So we will talk about the entrepreneurs, we will talk about the skilled immigrants. So definitely that will be a different topic. It will be very rich. We'll have a lot of details and
Hmm.
comparison between the two provinces because we're the neighbor provinces
Yeah.
in the West anyways, and there are a lot of shared resources there. Um, I totally agree with what you said about the genuinity of these plans or these numbers. Meanwhile, I have an idea that at least these plans give a path. Yeah, the waiting time is still there and it's
Yeah.
painful,
Yeah.
but it is giving a path and it's developing a lot of paths that maybe wasn't there before.
Hmm.
You agree on this, or where do you
Yeah.
find a lot of traction, or where do you find that more provincial nomination is going to happen right now?
I think it's going to be very interesting when we watch how express entry is going to change in the new year. So, the tiers and the changes on that are one thing, but actually the implementation of, so they're talking about pulling out the workers that, you need, right? Or that we need on the ground. And at a federal level, they don't understand what different province needs, right? Because it's too big. So maybe those increase in certificates has to do with giving more autonomy to the provinces to kind of say our province needs the following, right? So, and I think we see that somewhere reflective of, and I think this is what we're going to be talking about quite shortly, is some of those tiers that before were not skilled are now skilled. For example, like the healthcare aides and the truck drivers and a couple of things like that.
Yep.
So, is that a byproduct of the provinces saying, we need these people to be skilled workers so that they can live here, work here, stay here permanently? And so I think that's where it's going to be interesting to watch how come January, February, how Express Entry changes in terms of how they decide to nominate people. Because my understanding is it's not just going to be based on points like it is right now, right? There's going to be a bit more focus on it. But it's going to be interesting to see how it starts to actually work.
But my theory about this is we're going to see something that is before the express entry era, like before 2015, where it was a
Right.
knock base. So now they need teachers, so it's a knock base. So if you're not, because even if you're meeting the threshold, but you're not in the right knock, you're not getting an invitation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And it's going to, and I think, like I said, I think it's going to come down to a lot of, you're going to see a lot more, hopefully, provincial nominations under express entry, right? For that particular reason. Yeah.
the main problem with province nomination, I see, I'm not sure if you share the same perspective with me or not, but we're mainly talking about people who are outside of Canada and want to make it to inside of Canada. Province nomination is very accessible for those who are inside of Canada.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
if you're outside of Canada, like 90% of the province nomination program, except Saskatchewan, for example, is job
Yeah.
offer based, is job driven. So this is one of the things that I exert a lot of time and a lot of effort with my clients to explain. And oh, I want to go for OMP or AIMP, whatever. Do you have a job offer? No.
No.
So most probably you're not qualified for
Let's turn that off. Yeah.
that.
And it's
So,
true, right? And there are very limited circumstances where the provinces will give or will even consider giving you a nomination if you're not here. I mean, if you are here and you have, not if you are here, if you have a job offer and if you have family and if, then you become more attractive to the provinces for sure. But particularly since COVID, the emphasis has been on people who are already here, right? So that's the provincial nomination. So it's great in some sense and it has its drawbacks in others. But like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see how the province actually do it. I think because there is such a labour shortage, I'm hopeful that more people from abroad are going to be considered for these positions, or however they're going to be assessing it and inviting them to apply for permanent resident, right? It's a great way, but it also leads to another question. We got more questions than answers, I'm sorry. But it leads to another question that I have is really about, like, when you're looking at professionals and trying to attract more professionals here, it's great to have express entry. It's great to have all of these options for these professionals, but when they get here, they can't work in the profession that they are in, right? So
yeah.
as a personal example, like I did it myself when I moved here. I was a trained lawyer coming out of the UK system, and I still wasn't recognised and still had to go through a year and a half or 2 years of requalification, which I believe is far shorter than some of the other like engineers and things that they have to go through.
And
So
you're coming from the UK.
exactly, right? The system on which this one is built, right? So it's a very interesting process. So the idea behind express entry, the idea behind the knock codes and what it means, or the opportunity it means for people who are abroad, is exciting, but tempered by the fact that, each province has a different regulation, a
Right.
regulatory body. So if you are coming in a profession, I think it's a really good idea that you plan in advance. Like some of the changes that we've seen in the knock codes are great, so that you can work in related fields that are now considered skilled while you are waiting for your professional credentials to be transferred. It's another interesting offshoot.
I totally agree and hear you. And I'm not sure if I shared this with you before, but back in June, there was a roundtable with the Chamber of Commerce that I'm a member of here.
Hmm.
And Shane Fraser was in. And I asked exactly the same question. And the answer I got that, you know what? It's a tough job because it's not a one-man show. We have the federal government, we have the provincial government, and we have the regulatory bodies that actually kind of independent. But obviously everyone is, this is like what we call the elephant in the room that everyone is talking
Yeah.
about. I'm not sure if this is going to be solved soon. And let me add to this. We actually kind of acting like a qualifier for our South neighbors. So if you're a physician that you're coming here, if you're a dentist that you're coming here, and you spend like 2-3 years in making all these certificates, but you couldn't find a good job, what would you do?
Oh
US
yeah.
is there, right? So US is just like an hour
Yeah.
driving, and you will have a lot of work opportunities out there. And this is one of the things when it comes also, as you said, about the labor shortage. So I hope I think they are aware of that in the government, but would they have a solution for it or not?
I don't know.
No
And you know
one
what's
really knows
interesting?
about that.
I was actually at a meeting this week, and I had an opportunity to speak with the Irish ambassador to Canada, and it was something that is very much on his radar. So the difference again, so he was talking to me in context of the Canada EU trade agreement, right?
Yeah.
And I think Ireland has just recently ratified it, but they were talking about the potential of, at a high level, kind of talking about under these trade agreements having some sort of reciprocity for qualifications. And that's interesting because they are talking about this at a pretty high level, and there's a strong recognition that moving in any direction, whether you're going from the EU to Canada or vice versa, there is a desire that recognition there is a desire to have recognition between your professional qualifications. So it's been talked at a lot of levels, I think. Do you think we're going to see anything in the new year? Nope. I
No,
don't,
it's
because
too
like you said, it
early.
comes down to the regulators, right? So it's something
Yeah.
that we could be sitting here in 5 years' time still talking about, but it is a pain point that is well recognized, I think, at all levels of the administration and of government. Yeah.
And this was great that we're actually catering for two different kind of client base, but we are facing the same issues. We're facing the
Yep.
same things, and um, Canada is not picking on a certain group or certain ethnicity. It's just this is the system, guys. This is how it works for
Right.
everyone that's coming. And I was surprised that even for UK graduates like you or UK professionals who are, Canada is still a UK Commonwealth country,
Yeah.
more or
Yeah. No.
less.
And there is nothing. There's no method for equivalency. I think when we did it, it was like a case of you had to apply to this uh unseen body called the Federal Society of, I don't know, something. Federal Society was in it, and I'd never heard of them before, and I still have never heard of them since. But they were the body that would. It wasn't WES or it wasn't any of those. It was a professional body to assess your professional qualifications, and then you went through the provincial systems. So it's all very piecemeal, but again, they all know it's an issue. We'll just see where it goes, really. Mm-hmm.
I have one takeaway from that immigration plan, and this is my analysis. I could be wrong, but I have a good solid argument for this. Uh, Giving these numbers for, let's I want to read it, like 82,000 at about 82,880 for federal skill, and going all the numbers, so we have a total economic members about 266,000 people. But if we go to number 3, which is the federal business, we have only 3,500 federal business, which is the startup visa. uh, and
Yeah.
it's mainly for the self-employed and startup visa, which is
Right.
3,500 people. But my theory here is, giving all these numbers, I think we have a very good chance for those who are coming, especially as investors and entrepreneurs, not under any of these programs, not under the startup, not under the self-employed, because actually startup and self-employed, we're talking about 3,500 people. This
Yeah.
is very low. But coming under C11 and C10,
Oh yeah.
so we are
I Yep.
coming under a significant benefit on a temporary base as a work permit, and then jumping the ladder up to the PR. What do you
Right.
think?
So yeah, it's interesting because well, first off, there is no direct route, like in practicality, for like somebody under a C11 or a C12. And it's not as easy as probably if you had just come here and worked for a business in a managerial capacity or something. There is obviously, and we talked about this before, the federal skilled worker route, and that works really well for you if you are young enough and educated enough, and what we see with a lot, I think, well, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I see with a lot of my entrepreneurs, they are on what immigration would consider the wrong side of 35. Right?
Yeah.
And yet that seems to be the time when, most people are probably at their height of entrepreneurship, right? And those ideas or things that you have learned from earlier on, like, are coming to fruition, and you're running on your own, is probably between 35, 40 and upwards. And under the express entry system, you are starting to lose a lot of points because you're aging out in some respects, So that's interesting. I'd like to see something like that change, because to like entrepreneurs really feel like, and particularly in Alberta, the backbone of the economy. And there is no reason why, we should be giving entrepreneurs any less of an advantageous route to permanent residence than, somebody who's worked as a bar manager for 12 months, right? And it's also those entrepreneurs that hire locally. So, they also, some of them rescue businesses that otherwise, without their investment, would be going out of business and people would be losing jobs. Entrepreneurs are very important to smaller communities outside of the larger urban centres. And that's where you can see the real benefit of the C11 and the C10 is where, they have such a big impact on those smaller communities. So yeah, I'd love to see if there was something else coming for them for permanent residence. I'm
More
hoping there would
clear
be.
path for that, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah, a clearer
yeah.
path for that.
Really and truly, yeah, like for genuine entrepreneurs, absolutely. And when I say genuine entrepreneurs, I kind of feel like you have individuals like, particularly in a construction industry where a lot of them work as subcontractors. So you're not really an entrepreneur, right? But you are not really an employee, and you're kind of stuck in the middle,
This is kind of a self-employed, if we're gonna say it.
Yeah,
It's
it
more of a
is.
self-employed thing, right?
It is, but at the same time, if you're a contractor to one company and one company only who dictates your hours, right? Blah, blah, blah.
This is
You're
a very
technically
controversial topic. Yeah.
yeah, you're technically an employee, but you don't have any of the documents that IRCC would want to see from your employment,
And I
right?
bet you know that there is a lot of precedents, like a court precedents about that. There is a lot of
Right.
legal rules about this, and about that if you're self-contractor or a contractor or self-employed, but you're working with only one employer, so
Exactly.
it's more of a relationship how it works. But yeah, definitely, it's still that's from my perspective what I see. It's a good path to come, at least temporarily, if you can, if you have the financial ability, if you have the entrepreneurship mindset
Hmm.
to come into that. That would be a good path, because you still can get 200 points for executive position and
Yeah.
going back to the express entry. So I always call it with my clients, it's like we are playing Mario, Mario on
Yeah,
Nintendo
yeah,
Switch.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we keep jumping blocks. It's about jumping blocks. There is
It
no
is.
straight path, as you said, but it's still a really good path. And this will take us to the second part of our discussion about the changing in Knox, and it's becoming TEER right now, right? And now we have how many tiers we have right now? So we have
Is there
five, right?
5? Yeah,
Right. We
yeah,
have five
yeah,
tiers, right?
yeah.
But there's still good news. So if you can tell us more about it.
Yeah, so the tiers are interesting. And actually, so there is a and I don't know if you want to share this later on, because it's a good resource, it's a good tool. So there is IRCC does have what they call a concordance table. So between the
You want to
previous
share your
knocks.
screen?
Yeah, let me see if I just have this up here. I did earlier. I do.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can do that.
Yeah. Please do.
Okay. So can you see that?
It is loading now. We can see it. Perfect.
Okay, great. So here is the knock concordance tables. And what
Yeah.
they have done is it allows you to actually look through, let's see, here we are. There you go. So here's the tier equivalent for the knock code from your previous knocks. And it's a really good way of looking at it. I think a lot of people are going to want to use this in terms
Definitely.
of, yeah, my previous experience, does this qualify, right? So before, let me just see if I can find,
You can
so
try
before,
pharmacy assistant or whatever.
yeah, let's try. So here, pharmacy technical assistant is under tier 3, right? So
Yeah,
it's skilled.
it's tier 3. Now it's
Yeah,
qualified. Before it was not C.
right. Technical occupations and health. Yeah, here, look at this.
That
So
was another
this
one
was,
too.
yeah, and now they are skilled positions,
Yeah.
right? So the benefit of this, and like you said, there's 16 new additions to the skilled role, like to the skilled tier. So let's see. Also you have,
Let me read them out till you
oh
find
yeah,
this. So we have the newly skilled, which means those who were not qualified under express entry, but now will be qualified under the express entry. This is what we mean by becoming skilled. So we have the payroll administrators,
right,
dental assistants and dental laboratory assistant, nurse aides, pharmacy technical assistants and pharmacy assistants. And I had a lot of pharmacy assistants, so it was not C. Now it's
right.
tier 3, which is great. Elementary and secondary school teacher assistants, sheriffs, correctional service officers, bylaw
Right. Bylaw
enforcement.
officers. Yeah.
Yeah, um, electrologists. Okay. I don't know what's that. Residential and commercial installers, pest controllers,
Right.
repair and services, transport truck drivers. Yeah,
Right.
that's definitely a
Huge.
big thing. Bus
Yeah.
driver, subway operator, heavy equipment operators, aircraft assemblers. So
Yeah.
yeah, we have get 16 knocks here
Yeah, and
for
they're
jobs.
great because a lot of them, like when we think back to the professional issue that we were talking about earlier, right, with your assessing your qualifications, what it means is that you can there's a really good chance that you can work in a role related to your professional experience, um, but it doesn't mean that you have to wait any longer for your permanent residence, right?
Great.
So the fact that you cannot work as a pharmacist, but you can still work in that industry and still move towards permanent residence, there's a good chance you'll probably have permanent residence before your pharmacy qualifications come through, but you no
Oh,
longer have
definitely.
to wait that period out, right? So it's I think that's a really progressive. I think it's a very good move for particularly for the professional community. And on the other side of that, we see the addition of heavy equipment operators and truck drivers. Some of those skills, particularly in Alberta, we have been crying out for more of this. And they really are. And what we've seen over the pandemic is so many occupations that are not professional, but are absolutely in demand and skilled, right? Not anybody can get up and do these jobs, right?
Given
So,
Alberta's economy, this is definitely an essential move.
oh, huge, 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 huge. So, I mean, we're excited to see what that's going to mean for our clients here. I think there's big opportunity. It also opens the door for individuals abroad to kind of understand what the possibilities are here. You can get to permanent residence much quicker than they could before.
I was surprised that I was watching a documentary or something on a TV, and I saw that there's a special kind of truck drivers who are driving on ice sheets in winter that goes up north in Alberta, and
Yeah.
I really couldn't
How
understand, couldn't
there's
digest
a
how they are
whole, I
made.
think, yeah, I'm
Uh,
not sure if it's on like National Geographic or something, but the ice roads, right?
the
And
ice
you need to
roads,
be a very specified, specialized kind of trucker to drive that kind of stuff.
uh,
It's absolutely crazy, but it
that's
happens.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it
That's
is. It is.
crazy.
You know,
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't
know
want
if
to be
I'd get in
driving
one of
in
those trucks. No,
I don't want to be driving on a frozen lake. You are driving on a frozen lake. So because they can go only in winter time because
but it's
it's a
solid.
frozen
Yeah.
lake. That's it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's incredible. It's different, but it's unique. It's all part of where we live, right? Yeah. Yeah.
that's definitely a good ad. I think we cover most of the points or all the points that we were planned to
Yeah.
cover today. Um, Again, thank you so much for being here for your valuable insights. I believe we have to plan for the coming one, and I think we have a kind of agreement that the next one will be about the judicial review and how to come over refusals, because we have seen a lot of these, right?
Oh, yeah, and how that has increased, refusal rates have increased over the last year has been astounding, right? And it's interesting to watch in the courts what's being
Especially
said
after
about.
the Chinook, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think you can have this conversation without talking about that. And that's the processing, that's the technology used to process applications abroad, and which they're actually talking about bringing here to in-country applications. It's going to be very interesting to talk about it. I think we probably need about 5 hours to actually go through it all, but it's I think it's a topic that's close to both of our hearts. About why are applications refused? What can you do when they are? And unfortunately, it's the one thing. It goes back to kind of what we said at the start. We cannot guarantee the outcome of an application. You could have a really, really well put together application that is refused because an officer just did not look at the material. And we're seeing far more of those now than we have ever seen. It's my opinion that we're seeing that in large part because of the system that they are using to process applications, particularly from abroad. So yeah, I think we're going to have a lot of fun talking about it.
Yeah. I can't wait for it because we have, as you said, we're seeing a lot of refusals more than before, and maybe from some parts of the world than others. Let's put it like that. And it's a fact about how visa offices work. Meanwhile, it's not the end of the story. We still have different ways to go, either from reconsideration, a reapplication, or even go for a judicial review. And we'll definitely talk about the different steps of a judicial review. And but at the end, I love what you always say. We cannot guarantee the results. We are not the decision makers, not consultants, nor lawyers. No one can guarantee it, guys. It's just we are not the decision makers, right?
Yeah, and I think really, and this is something else that you touched on earlier, and I think it's something that's really important for people to know. If somebody is guaranteeing you a result in a short period of time, I would run in the other direction, right? Absolutely.
100%.
It makes me wonder how it's happening. No.
100%. 100%. That was awesome to have you, Karen. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for that great and valuable insights that we have. I don't want to take much of your day. I know that you have a busy day to go. So definitely we'll be agreeing on the next meeting that we will have, and we'll take it from there. I hope, guys, if you have any questions, that you can send it to us. And Karen, I believe also we will have your contacts, so if people want to just shoot an email, something, that would be nice, that people get in touch. And let us know what you want to know more about coming topics, what kind of ideas that or immigration snippets that you want to have more. Good.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.